Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It's Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. I remember the year. I'm going to forget the year. Sometimes a lot to talk about, even with the regular season over, including Denny, a fantasy football regular season post-mortem. We're going to get in. Who was the biggest fantasy disappointment of the year? Who was the biggest surprise? Maybe a defining fantasy trend. Of course, before we get there, we have to talk about the now, not the past, because the season is the past. Doesn't matter. If you didn't draft any running backs and didn't win a single league, like Denny over here has never drafted a running back for round 12.
Come on.
How did RB1 Khalil Herbert work out for you?
Not as well as I thought. I thought we were on our way, but it didn't work out. I will tell you, RB1 Chase Brown worked.
That's true. So we're going to talk some fantasy trends from the season, but yeah, we began, of course, with the coaches and the GMs. And the never-ending interview requests for Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, who, of course, just remained in Detroit again, since he's the new Josh McDaniels in more ways than one, Denny. But before we get to even all that, there's something even more pressing, even more urgent, and that is this nation's aging millennial fathers trying to shovel snow.
Yes.
There's a winter storm has cut a path of destruction across the American Midwest into the Mid-Atlantic region. Denny and I are both shoveling. Denny and I are both in ruins. How are you doing, Denny?
I'm sore. I immediately got outside. I woke up on Monday morning, saw that we had just been dumped on by the snow gods, and immediately went out and just started shoveling. And my daughter joined me. My son refused, but then he got the second shift, which was today, which was a horrible shift, let me tell you, because they had frozen over. So, that was a bad call by my son. And about 40 minutes into it, I don't even think I told you this. I stepped on a patch of ice at the bottom of my driveway, and I went down. I went down in a big way. I went flying.
Big way.
I went flying through the air and landed on my elbow. Couldn't feel my hand for a second. That sort of thing. But I do pride myself on being able to fall. I know how to catch myself. I know how to avoid like maximum pain. And I think I fell like on my side, my hip, my butt enough to cushion the blow and to avoid catastrophic injury.
Do you want to show us the bruise on air right now?
I do. Let me just stand real quick.
So first off, a couple differences between our snow shoveling experiences. My kids offered to help, but I ordered them away. I was way too cranky and I just wanted to be angry. It's kind of like special daddy angry time, snow shoveling. I'm being dead. So we had about 10 inches of snow, and it was such an infuriating experience. It was really heavy because we had a lot of sleet mixed in. Yeah. Some of it had iced over, and I was just in no mood. So I ordered all the kids away, and it got we have a really big driveway. You have a big deck. We have a big driveway. Got about half of it done, and then I asked my wife, who's that guy that your parents know that sometimes brings this thing around? And then he did. And I got the rest of my driveway plowed by some guy who, listen, I'm not going to name names. He may or may not have turfed a stretch of my front yard.
Really?
Yeah. Scalped it good. That's what I got for being impatient and angry.
That's rough.
Called in the big guns, and he turfed my yard.
I had a moment of suburban angst and humiliation when I looked to my neighbors, my direct neighbor directly to my right. I looked at his driveway, and his driveway,
of course, it's just immediately clear.
Looked as if it had never snowed. And I talked to him yesterday, and I said, "How?" I said, "How? Did you hire someone? Did you hire professional service?" He said, "No, I did it." I said, "So how?" Because my driveway looks like crap compared to yours. And he said, "You simply put salt on it before it snowed." So that's something to remember for next time. I will not do it, but I will remember it.
Every other driveway totally immaculate, of course. We don't do that around here.
No.
I don't care what my neighbors are thinking or doing. We will endure pain. We will endure humiliation. We will endure a spring sodding project. Denny.
You're going to need it. No more grass.
I have been in absolute disbelief at the scalp job on my yard. I'm not even, I wish I were kidding. It's consumed most of my thoughts the past 24 hours. Man,
you're not mad though.
If I had just been a little more patient, if I just put like a flag up to indicate where the driveway was, because it was literally Very difficult to tell. And we're down on that. I am so sore about it.
Yeah. You said you posted online. You said you're very sore.
Yeah, it's the
where's the soreness?
Goes without saying the lower back is sore.
Oh, okay.
A little less certain why my left hamstring is so sore. But
wow.
My left hand, my ribs are sore. My right bicep is sore. So what is your strat? My strategy is angry hurling. angry hurling. Occasionally I'll get a big one and actually walk it over to the pile, but I'm an angry hurler.
You gotta engage the core, I think.
I do. I was engaging the ever-living hell out of the core.
I mean, you gotta really feel it in the abdomen, and that's good exercise, and you feel good about that. I don't angry hurl. I kind of systematically just take one and then the next and the next. I do get mad sometimes. I'll tell you when I get mad. When I hit a chunk of ice and I can't get through, I get furious.
Me too. That's why I just didn't want the kids around. Like, kid, you don't need to see this type of deal. Like, you don't need to see this irrational anger out of your father.
I will say, I did tell my daughter to go in after she cleared off the Subaru and got one flake of snow in her boot and got upset. And I said, you know what? You can go have some hot chocolate.
My kids are the opposite. They're like insisting on becoming like icicle people.
Really?
And all like beet red, like ice forming on everything, on all their hats, all their gloves. Absolutely refusing to go in.
Were you drenched in sweat?
Oh God, I've never been more hot in my life. It was like 15 degrees, and I've never been hotter.
I was so hot. I wanted to take off all of my shirts.
Yes. I have never been more hot than when I was shoveling snow yesterday. You know, it's never been more hot. Is apparently the Titans front office. They're fuming at Ran Carthon because they have fired him after 2 years as general manager. You may remember Ran from such successful power struggles as firing Mike Vrabel last January, but now he's lost. So I guess Brian Callahan, I wouldn't really want to lose a power struggle to Brian Callahan. Titans, they have been adrift since Bud Adams died. I guess they say Amy Strunk Adams is the owner, but I think she's more kind of like they needed a central owner for NFL meetings. And it seems like I think the scuttlebutt is this no one's really in charge of the Titans. Like they're kind of fighting over it. Maybe Amy Strunk has taken more control, has consolidated power. But it seems like a franchise that no one can decide who's at the wheel, Denny. It very much includes in the football operations and now on the sideline. Well, not on the sideline, but they fired Ran Carthon. I guess they're all in on Brian Callahan. Like, what does this mean? What would you even call the Titans project right now? I don't even know what to call it.
Well, I mean, no one knows because they keep changing course after very short periods of time. I mean, they committed to Ran Carthon last offseason. They signed him. He's signed for another 3 or 4 years. And so they're going to have to pay him, I guess. And
brilliant gambit, sir. Sir or madame.
Got him. Certainly got him. Okay. So here's what happens when there is no plan. You have decision makers trying desperately to win 8 or 9 games and just stay afloat. And I think that's, last year, the Titans signing Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, acquiring Jarius Sneed, being a little bit splashy in free agency, but clearly not having a long-term plan. This is just flailing. And saying, hey, let's hope to win 7 to 9 games and everybody can keep the job for next year. But there's no long-term plan. That was clear with Ran Carthon in charge. That's going to be clear going forward until they have someone, like you said, who is actually in charge of the operation.
Do you think it was a mistake to fire Mike Vrabel? Like, we, of course, didn't really agree with his offensive principles, but Brian Callahan's weren't any better. The personnel was, of course, not any better. I'm not acting like Brian Callahan had like a full deck, but like they kind of impatiently fire Mike Vrabel, a guy who seems very well respected in league circles.
Yeah, and
now is like, other than Ben Johnson, seems to be the top candidate this go around. Was that like an impatient mistake, or can we give this a drift front office the benefit of the doubt?
I thought it was because I thought that they parted ways with Vrabel because he would not undergo a rebuild. But Carthon wouldn't undergo a rebuild either. So I don't really know. If I have some numbers here, can I share them with you about how the Titans offense operated? Because now this stuff I'm about to tell you shows a team that is adrift, that just really doesn't have any idea what it's trying to do on offense, particularly. They were 19th in pass rate over expected. Their pass rate over expected pinged around all season. I think, we talked about this on the show throughout the fall and into the winter. Sometimes they'd be 12% over, then they'd be 9% under, and you just never knew what direction they were going. With Mason Rudolph, they generally were more pass heavy, but not always. They had the 7th lowest dropback success rate, better than the Texans, and the sixth lowest rushing success rate, better than the Texans.
Man,
the Titans are way better than the Texans on offense. I don't know what to tell you. Only the Jags and Patriots had a lower rate of rush yards before contact, so the offensive line was not getting the job done. And here's one of the most damning things that I could say about Will Levis, and I can say a lot of damning things about Will Levis. 4.6 net adjusted yards per attempt. That is an all-consuming metric. Okay, that's lower than anyone in the league, except for Spencer Rattler this year. So it's completely over for Levis, and I actually think that that's what doomed Carthon. Is Levis was the last chance to be like, yes, we have something established for next year and the year after and the year after, and they don't. They had nothing at quarterback.
It was always a Hail Mary, but all that entails, including it was most likely to fall harmlessly incomplete, and it very much did that. Will Levis and Mason Rudolph too. They kind of half-arsed, Denny, both quarterback approaches where they didn't get a good young quarterback, or particularly, I guess they got a high upside young quarterback. They got a young quarterback with zero floor. Then they got a retread quarterback with a really low floor and absolutely zero ceiling. So they had a poorer than average young quarterback, and then I would say a poorer than average retread. And it was just the ultimate doom to fail. And it's kind of what was the plan here? And so from that perspective, they need new leadership. They needed to fire Ran Carthon. I say Carthon, but
is it Carthon?
It's Carthon, yeah, I believe. They needed to fire him from that perspective. The reason we don't have a ton of faith in that is that Vrabel got the GM fired before Carthon in December 2022. Then they fire Vrabel. Then they fire Ran. Just clearly, no one's actually in charge. And like you say, you're not going anywhere. 8 or 9 wins is the ceiling when no one's in charge, unless you somehow luck in to the next great franchise quarterback, which I presume maybe they could in the draft. But
yeah, it is.
They seem like a franchise where things are going to get a lot worse before they get better.
Well, there has to be some plan, and there is no plan. It is Carthon, by the way, and I'm sorry for mispronouncing his name 15 times. I will say, I think the front office is signing. I know it's not that consequential, not franchise ruining by any stretch, but the Titans going out and aggressively pursuing and signing Tony Pollard, I think, was a sign that we don't really know what we're doing, because you have Tyjae Spears, a young running back with a ton of upside, both as a pass catcher and a rusher, and you go out and you get a guy coming off a career worst season to play basically the same thing. And that's what they said. That's what the Titans coaches said in the summer. Remember, they said, well, what's the difference? There is no difference.
We even pointed this out over and over and over again in our blurbs. So yeah, they clearly have no idea.
They're the same guy. And that to me, I was like, wow, these guys don't know what they're doing.
they seriously, not even kidding. They were at press conference, do they're the same picture meme.
Yeah.
They would hold up Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears it's the same picture.
And they said that, well, that's what we want.
Exactly. They were framing it as a very good thing.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we want the same guy twice?
Yeah. That was definitely a red flag.
Please.
And man, yeah. Unless they get the greatest next GM and they somehow forms an immediate mind meld with Brian Callahan, things are very difficult. I don't know what I was going to say. Not good in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, that is the theme of these head coaching vacancies and these openings. Tennessee, of course, is in the front office, but this is not a good cycle. I guess by definition, a lot of times it's the bad franchises firing their coaches, but we have the Jaguars who have, just a catastrophically bad holdover GM and Trent Baalke. We have the Jets, self-explanatory there. Brick Johnson cannot make up his mind what direction he wants for this franchise. Oh. We have the Patriots. Once the model of consistency that seemed like they've all of a sudden become an owner franchise, which is what you just do not want. Bob Kraft is it seemed like must have been this like bristling and so resentful, somewhat understandably maybe, of Bill Belichick being like the face of the Patriots for the past 2 decades. It was like, you own the team. Like, I want to be like involved in this stuff. And it just seems like he's trying really hard to be really hands-on. Bob Kraft, Denny, you can get out your Patriots.
Bob, as I was going to say, Bob Kraft said explicitly, it's Bob Kraft time.
He did.
You know,
He really
didn't work
did. He created an X account solely to tweet, it's Robert Kraft time. And it has not been working out. So I feel like that's a dubious opening. My precious Bill Belichick left behind a hellaciously bad roster too. Yes. So I don't think it's a good situation in New England, especially with the young quarterback who kind of has won. What would be the one thing people would take away from Drake May's 2024? It'd be he got evaluated for concussions a lot.
Every game.
Yeah, like almost. So like I think the New England's a deceptively awful situation. You have the Saints that just like cannot get out of the past. Mickey Loomis going on like 25 years. He doesn't seem to have any idea like what modern football is, what to do. Like just like rifling through like Sean Payton's drawers. Like surely there's a plan in here somewhere, something to do. And then the Bears. I mean, 102-year-old owner, a franchise that all the Bears can do is. It seems like everything the Bears do is somehow like in reverence to 1985. Like
I know.
Time stopped at 1985.
You know, yes, and that's there are certain franchises that are so steeped in nostalgia that they can never succeed, right? And you have the Giants who are trying to relive 1986, okay, over and over and over again forever. That they're doomed to do that, okay? The Bears had a legendary season in '85. One of the few teams in modern history to win a Super Bowl with defense, right?
Yes.
And they've been chasing that for now 40 years.
Jenny, I was about to say 30 years.
No, it's 40. It's 40, folks. They're 40.
Yes, they are.
And so everybody's just cursed because of it. I honestly, that whole thing, I mean, yes, you got to feel good for like Caleb Williams winning a game to end the season after a 10-game losing streak.
10-game losing streak.
Whatever.
Not that we're keeping count.
But holy cow, man, that was a sad spectacle. It was. I mean, the players walking off the field like so
you and Kyle just absolutely hate small victories. Kyle Dvorak, Carter, colon, no small victories.
No.
Never be happy ever. Yeah, only be happy when you're hoisting the Lombardi.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, no, you're right about that. But I will say, as far as like the best coaching.
So yeah, what's the best opening?
Yeah,
we set the bar very low because we don't think really any of these are particularly great openings. What is the best opening?
They all have massive downside. I'm trying not to sneeze here for a second. But I have to say, that Caleb and Trevor Lawrence, I think, make the Jags and Bears viable. And also in Jacksonville, you have Brian Thomas, who is like a franchise-changing sort of talent, right? So I think that those are clearly the best options. The Saints, to me, I guess are probably the worst because they have nothing. They have nothing going for them. They don't even have Taysom going for them anymore. But then with the Jets, okay, the Saints are, to me, clearly worse. The Jets are just barely above. But with the Jets, not joking, not a bit. Like you said, you have, as a head coach, you're going to go into a situation where you might be doing battle with a teenager to make decisions for who is on your roster. And that to me eliminates almost everybody. I mean, the Jets came out on Tuesday and they said, Ben Johnson's not a good fit for us. And of course, what they mean is Ben Johnson would never, ever stoop to the level of coaching an embarrassing franchise like the New York Jets. They're basically telling their fans, look, the haters said that we couldn't hire Ben Johnson. And honestly, great call by the haters,
No, they truly, not even parody. That is what the Jets, like, honestly, good judgment, good self-scouting by the Jets. Yeah. Like, well, who's the best candidate? Immediately eliminate him from consideration because there's no chance he will take this job. So just immediately eliminate. I don't even care who it is. Eliminate him from consideration. Put out a press release. Like, I'll draft up a form press release. You put in the name.
I mean,
they're like, Are you absolutely sure you don't think Vince Lombardi is a good fit for the Jets job?
Right.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who it is.
Here's the thing that like it makes sense because Ben Johnson, the pickiest head coach in waiting ever. I mean, he's waiting. I don't even, what is he waiting for?
What is he waiting for?
He's waiting for the Niners to open up. Like
this guy turned down the Commanders, who have now made the playoffs with Dan Quinn.
Right, and Cliff Kingsbury calling plays. So
should have maybe looked a little more powerful.
Yeah, could have looked into it. Anyway, so the pickiest versus the worst team in the NFL. It's just a funny situation.
It is. The best I do think comes down to the Bears and Jaguars. The Bears, two sort of dysfunctional franchises, but the Bears' dysfunction, as you said, now goes on decades. The Jaguars, like Shad Khan and Tony Khan, I think like they genuinely want to win. I don't think they're indifferent, and they're not overbearing. Like they're not like they don't seem like overly meddlesome. I think kind of like Mark Davis in Las Vegas, who I also think honestly has his heart in the right place. They just keep taking big swings that go absolutely nowhere. And they've had kind of like, I would say like, unfortunately bad luck with their big swings. And if the Jaguars could get Ben Johnson, because let's be real, like you want to pair, Ben Johnson needs to saddle up with a young quarter. And like we've talked about this on the show before, like who's like the most like Jared Goff right now? Like who's in need? Yeah. Is there anyone more in need of a Ben Johnson type quarterback than Trevor Lawrence? Right. Jared Goff 2.0. I think the Jaguars are probably the best opening, even though they're not a great, they're a bad opening for like leaving Trent Baalke around. That makes no sense. Although Shad Khan said in an interview, like, we'll fire him. Like, did you see this? Like, no, he didn't. Not even a joke. He was sitting next to Trent Baalke. And he was basically, yeah, the next coach wants us to fire him. We'll do it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's not great either. Actually.
Oh, wow. I mean, that honestly, if you're Ben Johnson, you got to do it.
You do.
You
like have call in the code red. Baalke, hashtag Baalke out on Blue Sky. Get that trending on Blue Sky. They won't see it on Twitter, where most of their fans are. But yeah, get it trending on Blue Sky.
Ben Johnson will say it's Ben Johnson time when he gets to Jacksonville. I actually, now that we're talking about it, I do think Jacksonville is the best opportunity for Ben Johnson, who should have his pick, honestly, at 2 or 3 jobs here. I do have a stat, like we've talked about just the idea that Trevor Lawrence, over the past 2 years especially, has been asked to make difficult throws, okay? Like boundary throws, very low percentage attempts, right? And I actually have some numbers that bear that out. So it's nice when the gut actually agrees with the stats. So this past season, his expected completion rate, so this takes into account like the difficulty of the throw, was 63%. That was the lowest in the entire NFL outside of Anthony Richardson at 61%. You go all the way up the list to Jared Goff, whose expected completion rate was 72%. Wow, top 3. So that, I mean, it's an 8% difference, which may not seem like that, but it's a huge. It puts you from the bottom to the top, and it means that Jared Goff has doable, efficient type throws in the Detroit offense that Trevor Lawrence has simply not had, especially over the past 2 seasons.
And I just think you tie break if you're deciding between Chicago and Jacksonville. Caleb Williams' youth and upside is a powerful tiebreaker. But I also think that Trevor Lawrence just has fewer obvious bad habits. And like if you're Ben Johnson, like he's a more moldable piece of clay, which is like all these play callers care about now. Right. Caleb Williams, it's always Caleb Williams time. Yeah. Right. Like you're gonna have to get along for the ride, basically. If you're going to coach Caleb Williams, figure out a way to harness him instead of like molding him. Caleb's the guy where you have to figure out how to harness his powers because he's a very unique prospect and young player. It might not work out. But like you're on Caleb Williams' program in Chicago, where Trevor Lawrence, I think he has to like scream like, "Please, someone tell me what to do. Like, please, God, tell me what to do. I'll do it. I'll friggin' do it. Just please."
The Williams situation. I mean, he was 23rd in dropback success rate this year, which is not terrible, but it's. I'm sorry. Wait, no. 33rd. I'm sorry. Caleb Williams was 33rd in success rate, dropback success rate. Behind only Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. So I are better than those 2 guys. I think he has a long way to go. Like I think he needs somebody to help him.
he has a long way to go. He had probably, frankly, league worst coaching. Shane Waldron, who seemed like a fiasco in Seattle, even bigger fiasco in Chicago. He's got major front office problems, though, too. Like the team building, again, we're fantasy football guys. So in March, we loved it in March and April where the Bears made fantasy football moves. We were too naive to spot oh, yeah, that's not going to work. You have to have an offensive line for a young quarterback. And it took 68 sacks or whatever. And part of that is Caleb's fault, but
it is all Caleb's fault.
It's not all Caleb's fault. Caleb can be harnessed, but he's not like the modern. He's not like a modern efficiency era quarterback. He's like, I'm the quarterback. Like I'm going to make plays, try to make it easier for me. Like give us a good system at least. Like once the ball is snapped, like I'm the guy in charge. I'm not the button pusher, which I think has more upside than the button pushing quarterbacks, of course. Like you got to figure out a way to make your system work for Caleb instead of vice versa. Whereas Trevor Lawrence, you can put to work for your system.
I think so. I think Lawrence can be utilized, better in a Ben Johnson type system. I think Caleb, when he instead of taking the easy throw, he's going to spin out of the pocket and run around for 15 seconds and make a cross the body throw 40 yards downfield. Lawrence isn't doing that.
Do you want to hear the biggest damning with faint praise ever for Caleb? But honestly, I think it's pretty impressive that Caleb Williams did not get hurt this year. And his toughness must be off the charts.
He's very tough.
He was like me shoveling snow. He was staggered. He collecting his breath a lot and then would just never miss a play. And
almost every game.
I do think that's a great sign for Caleb's future where he had this fiasco season. And a lot of these fiasco seasons, at some point they almost create an injury. He never even gave them an opportunity to create an injury for him.
Yeah.
And give him some time off. So Caleb, I do think that's a good leading indicator.
Yeah, he has a lot of dog. There's no doubt about that.
No doubt about that. The worst opening, by the way, so we have a lot of competition here. I think they honestly all have a claim to the worst opening. All five of them have different things that could make them the worst. It comes down to the Jets and the Saints for me. And I do think the Saints opening is even worse than the Jets because the Jets is at least a blank slate, a blank check. They don't have a GM. It's an entirely new brain trust. You can do the proper team building thing, or you can bring in a GM and coach together. Mm-hmm. Where the Saints, it's Mickey Loomis, who's barely even a GM. I don't even really understand what Mickey Loomis does anymore.
I don't either.
He's I don't know. Is he just the cap guy? The Saints are a totally calcified front office and brain trust. That's just calcified. And I don't know, maybe they're willing now to turn over a new leaf and bring in some totally brand new ideas, but the leadership structure is calcified, and the salary cap, which everyone says is not real, is very real in New Orleans. They have just a catastrophically bad salary cap situation, almost no flexibility whatsoever.
They have no upside. I think that when you're head coach, you're looking for some franchise with some upside. Honestly, the Saints' upside is sneaking into the playoffs in a bad division, and that's about it. They really don't have anything else going for them, and they have proved over and over again unwilling to do the hard work of a rebuild, and it's not coming this season.
No, it's not. I mean, Derek Carr basically he has to be on the roster next year financially.
Oh yeah, no, they're tied to him.
Or I think if they cut him, he becomes owner of the New Orleans Saints.
Of the entire city.
Yeah.
He becomes the mayor of New Orleans. It's amazing.
He gets the deed to somehow the Caesars Superdome. It's wow, gotta be honest, I feel we've drawn up better contracts, boys. I think we've done better than this one. Even the one where we gave Taysom Hill $100 million or whatever seems better than this one.
Even when they gave Taysom the Louisiana Purchase,
it
was that was a better deal.
We gave Taysom Hill all Mississippi River rights south of Baton Rouge. That seems kind of short-sighted.
We really wanted him.
Yeah, he wanted him real bad.
We wanted those direct snaps at the 2-yard line.
And now he's getting royalties from all the world's biggest shipping companies. This seems weird. This bad deal. That's a bad deal. Good time to take a break. We'll be right back after this. It's Super Wildcard Weekend on Sunday evening. Catch Jaden Daniels and the Commanders as they travel south for a date with Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. Coverage of the win-or-go-home battle begins at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. Yeah, you and Kyle just condemning the Bucs doing right by Mike Evans, and yet very curiously, Denny, they're hosting a playoff game.
Oh, And then in the NFC South, how do you not host a playoff team? I mean, you have to be the Falcons and like literally give up in week 18.
You do. What was I was say, speaking of hosting a playoff game, we're going to be breaking down the entire playoff slate on Thursday with Denny and Kyle. We're going to, at the end of the show, I think, get into our favorites. It's just an ever so tiny preview of the preview show. That's later on. Right now, Denny, before we get into our fantasy post-mortem, Tyreek Hill, has he requested a trade? Has he not? I mean, I know he requested a trade. I saw him live on air saying he wasn't coming back. That was another thing. Those are the classic like headlines, like Tyreek suggests he doesn't want to return to he did not suggest. He outright said that.
No, he did.
He outright said that.
He said, I'm out.
He did. He said, I'm out. He's apparently cleared the air since then, but whatever. It's January 7th. There's a lot of offseason to go. The Dolphins, again, we talked about recently, I think Tyreek Hill is like a poor use of resources for them. How do you see this ending? Does it just end up with Tyreek Hill back in Miami after all?
Tyreek was bad this year, worse than I actually understood before I looked powerfully into the numbers. 1.75 yards per route run is by far the lowest of his NFL career. It's less.
You want to be at least 2. 2 is a kind of the cutoff for like good or bad. Being under 2, especially for a player like Tyreek, is very bad.
And compared to 2023, it's less than half of last year's yards per route run. Like that's a shocking decline. He caught 5 of 19 downfield targets for 1 touchdown this season. He was 43rd in ESPN's open score, in line with guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Rashad Bateman. So like I feel like he had a steep fall off here. And he's not young, and so it's not altogether shocking. I will say, I talked about on the Sunday show with you guys, the fact that he sometimes had route rates in like 60 or 70% mark this year was very curious. Like what was the plan for using him? Like I thought the whole offense was going to be based around Tyreek Hill, and that was not the case this year.
I think a lot of it had to do with injuries, which in some ways is comforting, but in other ways, he's a receiver over 30, and he was banged up a lot of the year. He didn't really miss any time. I don't know if he missed any time on the injury report almost every week. It wasn't lower body. I guess it was his wrist. I do think part of like the part-timerness had to do with the injuries, but it's never good when that's the good news for players over 30, because what do you expect when you're over 30? You expect more injuries to come in. So I think that was definitely part of it with Tyreek. I do think it's a situation where there should be a change of scenery. I think the Dolphins should use this money somewhere else, primarily the offensive line. Tyreek, listen, he's an alpha wide receiver. Alpha wide receivers shouldn't be subjected to Tua Tagovailoa, whatever that was last year, and the most horizontal offense you'll ever see in the NFL. I think like a change of scenery would do both sides well, but it's probably too complicated. For the Dolphins, they're running it back with Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, where like they don't want to go into rebuild mode clearly. So I think Tyreek will be back, but I actually think that's a mistake, and that Tyreek should be gone. But
I did, yeah. ESPN's Adam Schefter said the Dolphins leadership cleared the air with Tyreek Hill on Tuesday, so maybe he's not going to leave. But just I meant to provide a little context for the efficiency for Tyreek Hill from this past season. Guys like Jacoby Myers, Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, Darnell Mooney, they were above Tyreek Hill in yards.
Are you on the Pro Football Focus yards per route run right now? Because I am too.
I'm on the Pro Football. Yes, I am.
Alec Pierce, one of the several luminaries to average more. Even Cooper Kupp. Yikes. That's not good.
Yeah.
Adam Thielen smoking Tyreek Hill in yards per route run.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Khalil Shakir, 2-2. Well, the slider probably needs to be set a little lower if 2-2's there.
Yeah.
But 2-2, free 2-2. 2-2 makes big plays every time he gets the ball. And very curiously, they never give it to him. Denny, fantasy football, we love it. We hate it. We live and die with it. I had my best year in a long time this year. We'll get into that maybe in the trends part, because this year just happened to coincide with the way I always draft, and it doesn't always do that, and hadn't for several years running. But first off, we'll start with the negative. Who was, in your mind, the biggest fantasy football disappointment of 2024?
I mean, there are so many because of the, how many wide receivers completely tanked my teams, except for the one team that won something. I mean, it's a close race here. I actually had a lot of Chris Olave, and that was a disastrous pick because I often had to select him above Saquon Barkley. And I looked into it before the show. Saquon scored more points than Chris Olave this year. And so when you fade the only guy who matters in all of fantasy, Saquon, to select a guy who didn't matter at all, even when he was healthy, that's pretty devastating. I feel like Olave. I'm not blaming it on him, but
curious. Sounds like you're blaming a guy for suffering a concussion, Denny.
No, it's not. It's not about that. I mean, before the brain injury, I mean, it was bad. It was really, really deeply inefficient. Lots of opportunity, very little production. For me personally, I would choose Olave there.
I think far and away, I wasn't sure who I was going to say until I just started going through the summer ADP, and just immediately one guy hit me over the head, and never ever found a better candidate. And just far and away, Breece Hall, because his struggles didn't even have to do with injury. Chris Olave at least had the alibi of he got hurt. Like he was struggling even before that. Chris Olave has become one of the ultimate fell for it again players. Like it's never going to work. Like it's just never ever going to work. Chris Olave, kind of like totally different player, but kind of like Najee Harris. Like stop. He will never be a value at whatever his ADP is. Just stop.
Yes,
stop.
I have to stop.
We have to stop the fell for it again. But Breece Hall, man, I think he missed like a game, but it wasn't about injury. He never got buy-in from Aaron Rodgers. He never fully dispatched the rookie Braylon Allen, and then let another rookie mix in for touches. He never commanded touches. The pass catching was still pretty great for a running back, but wasn't what we were expecting when we made him the clear-cut RB2 overall. He didn't score. It's just like, what did he do? He wasn't efficient because it's not like the touches totally cratered. He still had over 250 touches. It was just a devastating season for Breece Hall. And you can blame Aaron Rodgers all you want, and he deserves a huge part of the blame. Like Aaron Rodgers just totally pig-headed in the way he ran this team. But like Breece Hall could have made it a moot point, like if he had just been undeniable.
Yeah.
He was not undeniable. Like Breece Hall never forced the issue. Like, dude, you guys have to give me more carries, because when they gave him the carries, he was not efficient or explosive. And just a really, really disappointing season from someone who looked like could be a top 5 overall dynasty player. And instead, we got like basically nothing but question marks going forward for Breece Hall.
Shout out to all the Jets folks who told me that Breece Hall would be a disaster in the Aaron Rodgers offense, because that came to pass. And I denied it. I said, no. You guys don't understand. Like this is a new Aaron Rodgers offense, but it was the same old Aaron Rodgers offense, and he wasn't checking down, and he wasn't running it close to the goal line. He wanted his touchdowns. So that it all worked against Breece Hall. I actually think he didn't fall off as far as like, I think overall play. He was in bad situations. He was injured for a lot of the time, especially in the second half of the season.
Well, he was injured, but he played. He was playing. He only missed one game, Breece Hall. He was on the injury report, but he did play. Like you're running back, you're going to be on the injury report a lot in the NFL.
Yeah.
This is everything. It was just a comprehensive disappointment for Breece Hall. There's not one thing from the season where like, well, at least he scored touchdowns, or at least he caught 70 passes, or at least he made yards after contact go burr.
Yeah,
like, they might not know he's good, but we know he's good. There is just nothing with Breece to cling to.
No, there really wasn't. A quick shout out, Anthony Richardson, biggest quarterback bust of the season. I know he missed time. I know he was benched. I know all that. In the end, he finishes 25th in quarterback fantasy points behind such guys as Drake May and Russell Wilson and Bryce.
You're gonna say Bryce?
Bryce Young. I said Bryce Young. Yes.
Even Kirk Cousins. My goodness.
It was. Look, I know, and you know what? Anthony Richardson's still going to be drafted highly in best ball this offseason. He is.
You want to talk about the ultimate fell for it again?
You got to stop falling for it, guys.
You have to stop falling for it. And I was out. I wasn't out of my rank. I didn't draft Anthony Richardson because I'm always a conservative drafter. I understood the rankings argument. I had him ranked highly because how could you not? And we kind of saw it's such a weird year for Anthony Richardson, where after he was horrible to begin the year, they finally used him in the more fantasy friendly way when he came back.
Right.
And you got a glimpse of what might have been, but I never had like the highest expectations for Anthony Richardson. Another one of my most disappointing guys, I must say, was Jordan Love, a guy who seemed like a model breaker as a rookie. Just like the classic, like a rare modern quarterback who kind of like Caleb Williams, like, dude, like, okay, you can have your system, but once we snap the ball, like, I'm in charge. Like, you can try to manage and manipulate me all you want before we snap the ball, but I am in charge once the ball's in my hand. And just never happened. He was really, really, really hamstrung by the coaching staff, of course, but just not. I expected at least, even if it was inconsistent, I expected spiked weeks from Jordan Love.
You didn't get him.
We got like vanishingly few spiked weeks from Jordan Love, and he was a really, really big fantasy disappointment. Not just for him, but like the downstream effects. Like, no one scored points with this guy, and a really, really disappointing season for Jordan Love, didn't he?
Yeah, it was disappointing for everybody in the Green Bay offense except for Josh Jacobs, who scored a touchdown, at least 5 touchdowns in every single game.
Josh Jacobs, who I guess I could get to in the trend piece, I drafted basically everywhere because I still draft running backs, and I worked.
I outsmarted myself there. It was like very clear the way that they were talking. They were like, "Yeah, I mean, he's our RB1 by far," and then no one else is close. And I bought into the Marshawn Lloyd nonsense. I don't know.
Well, at least there you have the injury counterfactual, but they were also never going to trust a rookie running back.
No,
that was pretty clear from the way they were talking. We went negative. Now let's go positive. Who was the biggest fantasy surprise? I'm assuming it was a person, but who was the biggest fantasy surprise of 2024 for you, Denny?
Yeah, I was going to go with the biggest fantasy surprise overall offense, but I mean, I mentioned it before. I mean, Chase Brown emerging as. It was between him and Bucky Irving for me, because those are two guys you get really late in August, way later than I thought you should have gotten them, who were in very, very muddled backfield situations, and they both emerged and as reliable, like borderline elite fantasy options by the end of the year. Chase Brown, his running back profile by the end was better than almost anyone's, including a guy like Saquon, because he was running all the routes and he was seeing a good number of targets every game. And so he was like game script proof, which you get. That's so rare. It's so rare for a middle or late round running back. So I'll go with Chase Brown as my biggest surprise, or pleasant surprise of 2024.
Chase Brown, one of the rare like non-rookie competitors for this, where he was only a sophomore, but mine, it was 2 rookies immediately came to mind. Bucky Irving was my choice. I was all over Bucky Irving in like summer dynasty drafts, but it's not like I was really expecting that to pay off this year. I did draft him a ton late just because we knew that Rachaad White had never put the clamps down on that job and was left vulnerable. To me, that was the most surprising part about Bucky Irving, is he never really like dispatched Rachaad White. It was like a 2-back backfield. He was just so good and efficient. And also at the times where it mattered most, like he went nuts down the stretch when it really, really mattered. Bucky, a guy, so I liked Bucky a lot. I don't remember why I fell in love with Bucky, but I got Bucky in both my dynasty leagues. But a guy I was counting on contributing next year or in 2 years, immediately carrying me to the semifinals in my primary dynasty league. Like, I was like, wow, okay, this is
pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, this is amazing. And the other one, I mean, we liked the player's upside profile, but Brian Thomas Jr., not just being like a rookie contributor, but doing so in a fashion where he was a target dominator. Mm-hmm. He was another guy where like I expected him to be good. I didn't expect him to be good this early, and I did not expect him to be good like this. Like, he needed to answer questions like, is he just a deep threat, or is he going to do damage at all 3 levels of the field? And he didn't just do damage. Yeah, he became like a target commander. Like, that's one thing we always talk about with young players. Like, are they commanding targets? And that's why we were kind of out on George Pickens after his rookie year. And it's just so important. If you're going to be like a true alpha receiver, you have to come in, and even as a rookie in the modern game, you have to be dominant. From when you're Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, they were all dominant from the second they stepped on the field. I was expecting big plays, like maybe Deshaun Jackson or something, different style body and player. But I was expecting boom bust from Brian Thomas Jr. I was not expecting like wholesale target domination. And
no,
that was a major surprise.
It reminds me, and only the old heads remember, it reminds me a little bit of Josh Gordon and his breakout season.
Oh, yeah.
Where like late in the season, it became clear like, oh, wow, this guy is just dominating air yards, targets, whatever. The matchup doesn't matter. The quarterback doesn't matter.
Nothing mattered. Yeah.
And so that's cool. When you figure out a guy like, oh, wow, like nothing can stop him.
No.
And I think that's what we hit on with Brian Thomas.
Denny, I think you and I were both really surprised by, because we were skeptics of this player and we were all in on one of his teammates. JSN kind of not just overtaking DK Metcalf, but really blowing by him in the second half of the season. That was surprising. And I mean, I guess it's not ever surprising when a guy with a first-round pedigree becomes good, especially still young, only his second year. I was surprised at how easily JSN moved past DK and just made it like undeniable. Like they couldn't keep up the DK thing, because I guess DK was just, he wasn't forcing the issue, but JSN was just like, you got to give me the ball. Like,
yeah,
like not open for debate.
It's hard. It's hard to say if the Seattle passing game philosophy changed dramatically, or if JSN just became the focal point. And the following happened. Geno Smith went from one of the highest air yards per attempt last year to only 7 air yards per attempt this year, which ranked 28th among 33 qualifying quarterbacks. And so that's a lot of checkdowns, a lot of short area and intermediate throws. And so that's JSN's, a preferred area of operation, and it's not DK Metcalf. So I don't really know if it was the chicken or the egg, but yes, it clearly the Seahawks offense became predicated on how do we get the ball to JSN, and because he's getting open in those short area and in intermediate areas of the field.
And it got Ryan Grubb fired.
It did.
But yeah, no, that was not JSN.
I mean, they had to.
They did. I mean, Ryan Grubb was a noble failure, I would say, where the college play caller coming in, like, I'm going to do the college thing. Like I'm going to be the first guy who does it, makes it work.
I know.
And it never does. But
it does not.
We fell for it again, but that's fine.
I fell hard.
I
fell real hard.
I just thought that it wouldn't matter. Like, I thought even if they were bad, like, I was always a Geno hater, and I somehow wasn't this year.
But they weren't bad enough.
No, they weren't.
And that's the problem, is that they didn't like bottom out and like have to drop back 50 times a game. Like their defense improved, over the final.
The defense really improved. Good job, Mike McDonald. Yeah,
I know. Thanks, Mike McDonald. You ruined my plan.
I know.
To have Geno just drop back. Geno, by the way, 3% touchdown rate this year. Like, and
he's not good. I'm sorry.
4 touchdowns at the end.
Seattle and analytics mafias both love Geno. He's not good.
He's probably not good.
They love on film. He pops because few guys thread the needle like he does.
He has really cool throws.
He has really, really cool throws. Then he has the worst ever third down and red zone sacks. He's one of their third down and red zone sack aficionados, and he just can't move past it.
I will say he did lead in anger per throw.
Oh, yes.
This year, which is a key metric.
Everyone else in America, every other American citizen is scared to death of DK Metcalf. Geno Smith treats DK Metcalf like his son, who just like missed a wide open net in a youth hockey game.
Yeah. Yes.
What are you doing?
I mean, dress down DK Metcalf on the regular.
Yeah, like it was insane. Every other human scared of DK Metcalf, understandably so. Geno, not scared at all.
Amazing.
Denny, any fancy trends you want to talk about? Or
okay, yes, real quick, and we're going to obviously get into this throughout the offseason. With the down year for so many elite receivers and for the unbelievable year by elite running backs, what we're going to have next year. Yeah, I mean, okay, congrats everybody for taking all my money, but
not even kidding. I had my best year in years because I can't. I try to go 0 wide receiver, and I can just never truly do it. And so
you're a running back.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I can never. I always want to go 0 RB, and I can never truly do it. And this year, I just every first 5 rounds, I always had 2 running backs, and I had such a good year because of it.
Yeah, well, I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
and so what you're going to have next year, though, is people saying, okay, well, it's going to be a throwback to like 2007, right? Where you enter your draft room and you go, I got to get my 2 elite running backs. I got to get them. you can't do anything without two elite. So I'm spending at least my first 2 picks, if not my first 3 picks, on running back of 2025. That's not happening. I've been around long enough to tell you not to fall for that. And the value of middling running backs is going to go through the roof. Okay.
Yeah. I might say I've been around long enough to feel like people won't learn anything and they'll just immediately run back last year's approach, which they probably should do.
Well, it depends. It depends on what kind of league you're in. If you're in sicko leagues like us, then everybody's just going to draft the way they've drafted since 2016.
Listen, the best ball drafters are just going to zero RB even harder.
Oh, no. Best ball drafters are different. I'm talking about normies, okay? I'm talking about like well-adjusted people who enter a league in late August because they want to compete with their friends. Now, those folks are going, and that's okay. I get it. You're going to chase so hard. I'm like, oh my God, Joe Mixon in the first, thank God. And it's going to be a disaster. This is me telling you in January, it's not going to work.
There are a lot of potential landmines next year. Josh Jacobs, he'll be maybe around the periphery of the first, like, I don't know, Kyron, James Cook, Chase Brown. Those are all kind of potential really bad first round picks.
I mean, you're going to be able to get
Bucky Irving, as much as we love him, maybe a potentially disastrous first round pick.
Drake London will probably be available in like the 4th.
Yeah, as he should be. He's not good.
Wow.
No, he's fine.
With Michael Penix. Michael Penix is like a revelation.
I know he is. He is. He really is.
So much better than Cousins. It's crazy.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. America's top high school football prospects face off in the annual All-American Bowl presented by America's Navy. Watch the nation's best this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Denny, if the literal U.S. Navy can sponsor a high school All-American game, what is stopping you from doing so?
Well, what's stopping me are all the Dollar Trees in my backyard.
And Denny checking has been pressed into the Coast Guard by the British somehow. Denny had such a bad fantasy season. He's been pressed in to service for His Majesty's Navy. That seems wow. Thanks.
I'm only allowed to eat beans and toast.
Yeah, Denny's eating. Get ready to learn salt pork, buddy. Listen. To stave off scurvy, you just need a little citrus, all right?
That's why I always buy lemons with my chickpeas.
Yeah, Denny is being sent on a doomed mission to Patagonia. Wow. Just because he had a bad fantasy season, that seems a little rough.
But it's what I signed up for.
I didn't know the British Navy could still press American citizens into the duty.
They can. It's a loophole. It's a loophole, and I'm departing for the Arctic Circle.
Yes. Then he made the mistake of living in coastal Maryland, too. That's a very rookie move by Denny. Denny, we're going to preview the entire playoff slate on Thursday with Kyle Dvorchak. Who is the best AFC team, though, according to Denny Carter?
I can't say the Chiefs.
Even I can't say the Chiefs this year, to be honest. I do think it's the year they're just officially at too flawed.
It's the Bills, right?
It's the Bills. It is the Bills, but we also know, like, when it's the Bills and Chiefs inevitably play, it's not going to feel like the Bills are going to win.
No, it's not.
That. No. We know it's kind of like it has to be demonstrated on the field at this point. There's no reason the Bills should let the Chiefs beat them this year. Like, there's just none, truly none. And yet, I will not believe it. Patrick Mahomes, to go full 2002 analyst, is the ultimate winner. He just thinks about how am I going to win the game. He finds ways to win, does whatever it takes to win. Sean McDermott is the ultimate, how will I lose this game? He's the defensive Kyle Shanahan. He does not play to win. He does not coach to win. Josh Allen's software could override all of that. Because Josh Allen is like Mahomes. He'll do literally anything to win. Mm-hmm. But unlike Patrick Mahomes, he's not held back by his coach and their approach. And so I feel like you have to believe it when you see it. But I mean, the Bills, they are the team this year in the AFC to me, because the Ravens are getting scary again, but the Ravens they have a fatal flaw this year in the defense. It tightened up late in the year, but I just think it's a fatal flaw.
I don't know, man. I was going to say I was real close to picking Baltimore because that fatal flaw, I think, has been
tightened it up a lot.
Has been solved. Apparently, like the film guys are saying Kyle Hamilton is playing deep, more often now, and stopping that the long ball, which they were giving up at an alarming rate for most of the season. But like since week 13, no team allows a lower EPA per dropback than the Ravens. Now they played some pretty awful teams, including Bailey Zappi and the Browns. So
yes.
I understand there is context to this, but the fact that they buckled down within the secondary and then continue to produce on offense makes them frightening in a way that I don't think they were frightening back when they were just getting destroyed by every passing attack that they faced.
To go full superstition and narrative also too, there's like a long history of teams just can't get over the hump. They're like overrated, quote unquote, every year. Everyone thinks it's finally their year, and it just never is. And then they give up on them. Like the Ravens, how many different times we heard like the Ravens are the best team? Like the Ravens has set every single DVOA record this year. Like there's no way the Ravens can lose, and they instantly lose. They're over that hump, like where they've already been hurt so many times. They seem like a classic post-hype champion to me, basically. Where they're very, again, I'm going full 2002 here. They're very battle tested. They've seen everything. They would make a lot of sense as a post-hype champion to me, Baltimore.
Can I about Josh Allen real quick? He had a great season in that he limited the mistakes. His interception rate was 1.2%. Last year was 3%.
He's going to double that in the playoffs, by the way.
Only threw 6 picks all year. But you look at the rest of the numbers, and you have drop-offs from the past 4 seasons in touchdowns, yards, completion rate, attempts, completions. Like I don't know if this was like his MVP season beyond not throwing interceptions.
No, people badly wanted it to be, but it's just not going to be. It's going to be Lamar again.
I mean, 28 touchdowns, that's not an MVP.
Lamar's statistical case just became way too overwhelming. And again, I think it is a valid point. Like when you look at the body of their careers, there's no way Lamar Jackson is a 3 MVP player to 0 for Josh Allen.
Right.
That's just the way it's shaken out. And like you can't let that like prevent you from like casting your vote for the clearly better player this year. It is crazy, but that's the way the cookie is.
I mean, Lamar has a legit chance to be like a 5-time NFL MVP.
It is nuts.
That puts him in a very rarefied air.
It does, and he deserves it this year.
Yeah,
Josh Allen just didn't do enough statistically to do it. So yeah, even last year, this time, remember, like rather famously in our little friend circle, I was like, yeah, the Chiefs are just easily going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I actually do not think that this year, but I would, to be clear, would not be surprised at all. The Chiefs are a team where I think you have to just disregard the regular season, and they went 15-2, so you're disregarding 15-2. I just think it doesn't matter. Like I just think it does not matter. You have to disregard the regular season with the Chiefs.
I hate to like beat a dead horse here, and I'm sure that folks have heard this in other podcasts, which I don't know why you listen to other podcasts. You should just listen to us. But you look at like point differential for the Chiefs. They're third in the AFC West, third in point differential. Like, how is that possible? How did they do this beyond just being clutch? The 59 was their point differential, right? So just to give you an idea, like where that sits, the Commanders had a point differential of plus 94.
The Bucks, season. The Packers, both more than double the Chiefs' point differential.
Yeah, so you know the drill. I mean, they were like around like the Steelers, honestly. Like what? And
well, it comes back to Denny. The regular season does not matter. They're not. They have nothing left to prove. So they're genuinely not trying to set records or do anything cool. They're just trying to win the game and get to the postseason. Yeah, that gets into excuse making, but I really think there is an element of that to it, where they know that when you've already won 3 championships, like the only thing left to do is win another championship.
Yeah. Why are you going to set the league on fire in the regular season? That doesn't.
No, I'm serious. Like again, it's probably excuse making to a large extent. But I think there is an element of that. Like whatever, just get through the game, get to next week, get to the playoffs. We don't need to like fillet everyone. It'd be cool if we did, and they will again when they get better receivers. Denny, real quick, best team in the NFC. I think there's a few different answers here. But I think I'm going to go with the obvious answer, Denny.
I mean, the Lions are inevitable. It feels like
They are. They really are. They really, really are.
Like the fact that they're like still banged up on defense and they just decimated a really good Minnesota offense last week. It feels over for the Vikings, by the way.
It does.
And the Lions just at home, like who's beating them? Who's beating them at home?
The Lions had to get the bye. Lions fans have become very sensitive and they'll take umbrage with this, but for so many different reasons, they had to get the bye. I know that they're getting healthier on defense, but they're still not healthy on defense. They needed help. They got help where they only have to play 2 games instead of 3. They don't have to leave the state of Michigan. And so for health purposes, they had to have the bye. They had to have the bye too, just to get healthier. They're still not going to be full health, but more than any team, I felt like they desperately needed a week off. And just, who is going into that stadium? It's taking on like the classic, like kind of like theater of doom feel in that stadium, like where you just can't win. Like if you're not the Lions.
No, it definitely feels that way. Like I got the sense, watching the Vikings Lions game the other day on NBC, I thought that like the Vikings are in trouble. Like the feel of this game is one where it certainly seemed like they just could not win. I don't know. I didn't know it was going to be a blowout, obviously, but I just felt like they could not win. Just real quick, shout out to Jared Goff, who proved me wrong over and over and over this year. Just real quick, his EPA per drop back is in line with both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and that's very, very hard to do as a guy who never runs.
Yeah, he's still bad.
He's not bad.
He's not. He's become very good.
He has become, whether it's the system of the players or he's very confident. He didn't used to be confident. I will say that. Whatever it is, wow, he is just lighting it on fire every single week. I know he started slow last week, but then he roasted him. So
this is why Trevor Lawrence needs to get in the Winnebago and camp out in front of Ben Johnson's house.
No, really, like Trevor Lawrence needs to speak up and be like, please come save me, Ben.
Like, just listen. I know he can coordinate a defense. Don't hire Robert Saleh. Don't hire anyone who's ever worked with defensive backs ever.
Please.
Like I want someone who, like, when they play Madden, they simulate on defense. Like I don't want anyone who has anything ever to do with defense.
That's right.
And you got the guy's name is Ben quote Josh McDaniels Johnson. Get him down here to Jacksonville. The Lions, man. They needed the bye though, because I feel like everyone is staggered by injuries at this time of the year. I just think it's still most extreme with the Lions. And they needed time to regroup, and they needed home field advantage. And since they're amazing, they got it. And
what's your pick for biggest upset of round 1? Do you have one?
Well, the Vikings are losing to the Rams.
Yeah, the Vikings are good.
It's pretty unfortunate. That it did feel like a little bit like a season ender, that game. This felt like a season ender.
I just wanted to say the Packers are going to beat the Eagles.
That's live. That's definitely live. The stone cold lock of the week, not to be famous last word. I mean, the Steelers, no offense to Bezos Vision, you don't need to watch this game.
Wow.
You don't need to watch Steelers Ravens. You do not need to watch Steelers Ravens.
That's strong.
Like, it's just not happening. The one, I do not think this is going to happen. The one upset that I do, it just feels like a little too on the nose, is the Broncos beating the Bills.
Oof.
And it's the Broncos. Sean McDermott, man, has me spooked. Like, I just don't think Sean has what it takes. And Kyle disagreed. It's completely like Peyton is a cutthroat. And it just seems like he's going to have some special stuff ready for that game. And Sean McDermott better be ready.
I got to say, Marvin Mims emerging as like a big play guy changes this Broncos offense. It makes it far less like toothless. For a while, it just felt like the Broncos could like muddle their way to like 21 points. And now it feels like they have a little upside because they finally figured out who this guy is and they get him the ball. And all he does is score long touchdowns.
The Bills need to go in this game as if the objective is to score 50 points.
Yes.
Go into the game as if the objective is to score 50 points.
Please, Sean McDermott, if you're listening, do not try not to lose.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They will lose. He needs to go in as if they're the bully and like the enormous favorite that they are. And every drive needs to end in a touchdown.
Yes.
That has to be the mentality for the Bills.
Do not kick a field goal on 4th and 1 from the 7.
No.
You score the touchdown.
Because the longer the game stays tight, the more that Sean Payton is going to eat.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're right. Yes, you're right. Sean Payton is dying to get into the fourth quarter down by 6.
Yeah, he really, really, really is. So we'll talk about that in a lot more detail on Thursday, though, with Mr. Kyle Dvorak. So for Denny, real quick, though, tell what you have coming on the site.
Yeah, I have the DFS stacking report, which will be live on Rotoworld on Thursday morning. I'm going to go through all the stacking options for DFS purposes for this week. How to play it chalky, along with the fish who always get there, and then how to get crazy, how to get a little wild with some off kilter picks.
I'll be reading the fish parts with great interest.
Me too.
as I win $200 on Saturday.
There we go.
So I'll be reading. I'll be ranking the entire playoff field, where I'm going to get more into the dynamics of what's going on with these 14 teams. So for Denny Carter, I'm Patrick Daugherty. We'll be with you. We'll be back with you with Kyle on Thursday. Thanks for listening.